Well, welcome to the Downey Theatre.
I'm Ashley Alvarado, Director of Community Engagement at KPCC, Southern California Public Radio.
I'm John Cohn. I'm the managing producer of KPCC In Person, our events and engagement platform. Southern California is full of untold stories and even more that go unheard.
And so last spring, we launched Unheard L.A. to change that. It started with an invitation to community members to share their lived experiences in whatever format worked best for them.
We wanted to explore this region through the eyes and the ears of those that live here, that work here. So our focus in this series is how each piece relates to life in Southern California.
And thanks to the support we received last year, we're back with more Unheard L.A. and real people amplified.
Each show is distinct because of who's involved and where we are, and tonight is no exception. Some of our folks tonight, they are experienced storytellers, but many aren't. In fact, tonight, there are people that are taking the stage for the first time and have never done any kind of public speaking. Thank you.
Whew. He's talking about me.
Got a little touch of the feels there, thank you. But to be honest, that is the spirit of Unheard L.A. and our desire to be inclusive of a range of voices, experiences, and perspectives, regardless of what kind of experience they may have. This may include a range of observations and perspectives. As a non-advocacy, nonpartisan media organization, just a reminder that what you hear and see today is reflective of our courageous community members and not really an endorsement by KPCC.
Thank you to the California Wellness Foundation for supporting this project and making Unheard LA possible. Our next show will be in Baldwin Park on April 7th. To learn more about upcoming shows and to find out how you could be a participant in one of the shows, go to kpcc.org/unheardla. We invite you to engage with us tonight on social media too, using the hashtag UnheardLA, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at KPCC in person.
No show would be complete without a host. So please join me in welcoming the artistic director of Watts Village Theater Company, Native Angelino, and your Unheard LA host, Bruce Lemon.
I am Bruce Lemon. I am a storyteller. I'm a son of Watts by way of Bruce and Tracy of the House Lemon. I'm a master third grade solar system model maker right here, science fair champ, and a former future astronaut. I say this because I know NASA's down the street and I'm ready. I hear we got a few Unheard LA alums in the house. How about you make some noise, identify yourself? All of you were on the show? What? All right. Who else we got in the house today? Can we all just shout out where we're from on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3, go. Ooh, at the top. Say it again. Ooh. You know, I didn't think we were going to have any locals in the house today because of the rain, because you know we don't go out when it rains. We're all too busy at home running around with pots and pans, catching leaks we didn't know we had in our roof. But I know you all bought the last tarps. Just want to put out there, we got a big following today out here today. We've got some folks up here in the balcony, and while you're up in the balcony making all the noise you can, you might see the projector shake a little bit. That's their fault. All right, we got the west side in here, right? All right, how about the east side? Yeah, that's where I'm from. Let's say I am your host for the evening, but 5 shows in, I'm beginning to feel like this is more of a family, and I'm like your cousin, that uncle you see like once a month that keeps telling you stories about people you're not really sure if they really exist, or people who've been through events that you went to but had wildly different experiences. Or maybe even some traumas that you didn't even have on your radar until you saw someone stand and deliver right here. That's what this is all about. Opening your world up to something bigger than your neighborhood or your city or your life. You know, it's a big, wide world out there, and few cities are a microcosm of it all like LA. And people flock here from all over the place because we got everything here. And transplants outnumber those that were born here like myself. But there are so many people who have deep roots here, whose families have called LA home for generations. And while differences are celebrated here, it's not always easy to recognize or gained acceptance from those who are closest to you. Please welcome to the stage your first storyteller of the night, Pablo Mars.
I was born and raised in Echo Park. My Mexican, Spanish, Cuban clan was not your traditional Latino family. We weren't Catholic. My sister never had a quinceañera. And there were no grandmothers slapping out homemade tortillas in my house. We were surrounded by people of all different ethnicities, races, and cultures. I ate Russian pierogi at birthday parties with the Czech family across the street. I heard French music in the home of Émile and Simone, the elegant Parisian couple who lived catty-corner from us. I learned Yiddish words while noshing on lox, bagels, and cream cheese at my best friend Richard's house. And I shared candied ginger with my Asian friends in school. We played kickball with the Armenian kids around the block, and Nora, my first girlfriend in 4th grade, was Scottish. So what did all this mean to a sensitive child growing up in a house of liberal Latinos? I was taught that we were all part of one big family, no matter who or what we were. That worldview served me just fine until I hit puberty. I started to feel like an outsider. My hormones weren't reacting the way they were supposed to. I had girlfriends in high school, and I even lost my virginity to a wonderful girl whose parents hosted our nights of lovemaking in their home. But something was missing. The thrill just wasn't there. What the hell was happening? As a kid, I did some things that some people might have called red flags. Things like designing and sewing clothes for my sister's Barbie doll, or being fascinated by my mom putting on her makeup. I would perk up whenever I saw TV's Robert Conrad, star of The Wild Wild West, stripped down to his waist to fight some bad guy. Playing dress up and putting on little shows in the backyard didn't count. My father was a stand-in and a background player in TV and movies, and my mother's father was a vaudeville performer and a clown in Cuba and the US. Performing was in my blood. Then I turned 18, and I met a young man in college, and I fell in love. I finally found what was missing. I found that I was gay. My father had set up a bedroom for me in our basement so I could have more privacy as the eldest son. My new boyfriend, Danny, was spending a lot of nights in my room. We were both acting students at the Los Angeles City College Theater Arts Academy, so our excuse was that we were rehearsing late nights on various school projects. It was easier for him to just crash in my room rather than drive all the way home to West LA. We were sitting in my basement bedroom one night when my parents came downstairs and started questioning us after becoming suspicious about my sexuality. Things got ugly really fast. My father started yelling and accused Danny of seducing me into being gay. He ordered Danny to leave immediately. I wanted him to stay, but thank God he didn't. My parents believed in corporal punishment, and my emotionally volatile father went ballistic, landing more than a few good punches on me. What the hell? It was surreal, and I couldn't bring myself to hit him back. All I could do was defend myself, throwing up my hands to try to stop him. When things finally calmed down, I tried to explain my newfound sexuality to my parents, but my father just sat there, fuming. He was devastated. I hated him in that moment. But I knew I had broken his heart. And that night I realized the limits of my liberal Latino parents. I had a black eye and a banged up face that I had to excuse to my friends. I got mugged. I would say that with no conviction whatsoever. I didn't speak to my parents for a whole week. I contemplated punishing them by moving to another city and never seeing them again. But I knew that would devastate my sister and my two brothers. So I did the next most hurtful thing. I found an apartment and moved in with Danny. It was an escape into the big city to find refuge from the now toxic atmosphere of home. My friends in the Theater Arts Academy became my new family. I felt I could be myself and thrive creatively with other gay people who were discovering their true nature through their art. Acceptance was easy in this new world. It was the hedonistic 70s, after all. As long as you were young, frisky, and eager to explore, you were in. There were plenty of places to meet or hook up in L.A. Gay bars, bathhouses, discos, and after-hour clubs. There were classes, shows, and house parties. And there was the Mecca known as Silver Lake. West Hollywood hadn't yet become the center of gay life in L.A. Silver Lake had always been a funky, bohemian, quirky neighborhood of people finding their way out in the wild west of L.A. ever since the city was founded. It was home to the pioneers of the film industry, sexual revolutionaries, radical political movements, innovative artists, architects, and literary figures. I felt so blessed that I didn't have to escape some little bigoted small town like so many of my gay friends had. Silver Lake was where I found solace as a young gay man. My liberal Latino parents were confused and anxious about my new lifestyle, but they never made me an outcast. Nope, we just adopted a don't ask, don't tell policy. They didn't ask about my romantic life, and I never told. You see, if you're a Latino, you are always part of La Familia, no matter what. There is no escape. Can I get an orale? Things stayed calm for several years, and then another jolt to my family. My brother Robert came out as gay. I was stunned. I was no longer alone. I was going to have an ally in the family. But then Robert contracted HIV, which changed everything. Forget any anxieties that my parents might have had about having two gay sons. All that mattered now was that they had a son who was sick. I had already gone through a decade of losing at least 2 friends a year to the pandemic of AIDS. I tried to prepare my parents for what I knew was coming. After a 2-year battle with HIV, my brother's body finally gave out. Robert died in May of '92 during the weekend of the LA riots. The city was under a nighttime curfew. Robert was facing his last days on earth, bedridden, emaciated, and under a morphine haze at my parents' house in Echo Park. I was facing a city in flames, depressed and shell-shocked, trapped in my tiny guest house in Mar Vista. My brother's death was a wake-up call. No more secrets, no more hiding, no more don't ask, don't tell. I never had the chance to talk to my father about what happened that night in my basement bedroom before he died, but I still forgave him. I knew that no matter what, he always loved me. I'm not sure how he would feel about live streaming our dirty laundry in a theater in Downey. But I think he would be okay with it. He was a wonderful storyteller. No hay problema. It's fine, he would say, so long as you're still part of La Familia. Thank you.
Each of us is made of a million moments. Some we lived and some we heard at the knees of our grandparents. They're part of who we are. They stick with us, and we carry them wherever we travel in the world and eventually land. And when it comes to one's identity, it doesn't always fit in a single checkbox. Here to share a bit about her story, please welcome Yasmin Safdié.
Last year, as I stood at the Los Angeles Convention Center, singing the national anthem along with the over 800 immigrants who are becoming US citizens, the goosebumps extended through my arms and legs, and tears kept coming out of my eyes like unstoppable waterfalls. Images invaded my mind, images of the journey that it had been to get to that specific moment. The applications, the 2x4 pictures, the luggage, the airports, the border stops, the questioning, the sweaty hands, the shaking bones, the fears and the hopes. And as I thought about my own story, I thought about the hundreds of stories surrounding me in that room. Among them could be stories of sacrifice, of searching for refuge, stories of dreams, of nightmares, of trauma, of hard work. The stories of the immigrants who make Los Angeles the colorful and vibrant, multicultural piece of art that it is. I don't know if I was crying out of happiness, my own as well as the shared happiness of those around me, because we made it. Through it all, we made it. The lucky ones to hold the most coveted citizenship in the world. The privileged ones to know that, at least for now, we can't get deported. Or whether my tears were filled with bitterness, thinking about what it took to make it. All the things and people I had to say goodbye to, pieces of my world, my life, and myself. There is this part during the citizenship ceremony when we are asked to renounce our loyalty to our countries of origin and to adopt this new place as our home. Home. The word, after all these years, continues to trigger what seems like an infinite flood of ideas and feelings in my mind and heart. How do we define it? What does it mean to be from somewhere? What does it mean to belong? For 14 years, I've been asked the same question. Where are you from? 14 years of an almost weekly reminder that to the world, the answer is never here. I come from generations of immigrants, my parents, their parents, and those who came before them, all escaping something, searching for something, coming and going, and redefining their lives and their identities. My paternal grandfather was 17 in the year 1930 when he left his home in Syria and moved to Argentina, searching for religious freedom. I heard stories of him coming out of the boat and stepping into the pier with a long white cotton tunic and a wooden trunk filled with books. I wonder how he felt that day, as well as how he felt the last day he lived. Did he feel at home? Was he still longing after all those years for his life in Syria? My maternal grandfather moved to Argentina from Morocco in the 1920s. He was the descendant of Jews who escaped territories of Spain dating back to the Inquisition years. My parents, both born in Argentina, decided to move to Israel because of the opportunity to live in a Jewish state. The culture shock they felt in a place that was supposed to feel like home caused them to return to Argentina after only 2 years, and with me in their arms. I was born in Israel, raised in Argentina as an Arab Jew until the age of 13. In the year 2001, when an economic crisis hit Argentina and left the country in political and economic unrest, my parents decided that we, as thousands of others, had to leave. We packed some bags, closed our house, and headed to Brazil. In 4 days, at the emergence of my adolescent years, I said goodbye to my life as I knew it, and I hopped on a 36-hour bus drive through those South American borders. We didn't have documentation to stay in Brazil, so we had to go under the radar. After a couple of years, my mother was able to pull some strings to get us to the US. That's a story in and of itself. I was now 16, living yet another country, and landing in Los Angeles with a backpack and 3 languages that did not include English. Where are you from? Where do you feel at home? I don't know how to answer that question. When my passport says Israel, my accent says Argentina, my roots go back to Syria and Morocco, and my address is Los Angeles, California. I went to high school, college, and grad school here. I am a citizen, but somehow always a foreigner. At times, the question will be, what are you? I can't help but think that what I'm ultimately being asked is, what does the color of my skin, the shape of my face, or the curves of my body say about where I come from, and therefore who I am? Is home where you find yourself physically? Is it where your passport says that you can legally reside? Is it your culture or language? Or is it the biochemical genetic composition of your body? Maybe, like most things, it's all of it. And that's why I, like many people in Los Angeles, cannot complete those forms and mark those boxes in the questionnaires. How do we begin to conceptualize our identities into those choking parameters? And what is it that we feel? As I shared with my therapist my existential crisis of identity and belonging, she told me that I had to build my home within myself, that I should be my home. If home is all these different aspects of our identities and our histories as we carry them within us, home is something that we bring wherever we go. I bring within me the Mediterranean skin, the wide hips, the wild curly hair, and the almond-shaped eyes. I bring within me the Argentinian barbecues, the yerba mate, the watching soccer games on Sunday. I bring within me the walking through Brazilian slums and playing capoeira as a teenager. I bring within me this thick accent and hugging and kissing everyone I meet. The places I come from and the stories I have lived are part of my identity and what I bring wherever I go. But my home is not a country, a flag, a language, or a legal document. My home is the people I have built bonds with, the people I love. My home is my mother's embraces, sharing moments with my siblings, my nieces, and my nephews. My home is my friends. My home is all those humans in this world who I have touched and who have touched me, with all of what we bring from all the places and stories that we come from, creating new senses of belonging and connectedness. That is my home.
The phrase comfort food exists for a reason, right? For me, it's that big frozen family-sized lasagna in the bright orange box. Remember that? Yeah, I even look at that box and whew, I'm that 10-year-old ashy-legged kid with the bowl cut and extra teeth all over again. Here to share a bit about the food that takes him home, please welcome to the stage, Alan Prom.
We all have that one taste or smell that floods our thoughts or memories, where one bite or whiff takes you back in time, and all your senses are focused on that one moment. That's especially true for me as a chef, and as a Cambodian American, I love making Cambodian food because that's one pillar of my culture that I can hold on to. Of all the Cambodian recipes I've learned throughout the years, my favorite is katil. For the most part, I learned how to make katil from watching my mom in the kitchen. As I got older, I began to pick up tips and tricks from my aunts and older cousins who would make their version of katil. Broth is poured over rice noodles. It's with ground pork, shrimp, meatballs, and sometimes organ meats. The dish is finished off with green onions, fresh chopped Asian cilantro, and roasted garlic. There's so many variations of katil, but it all starts with the flavor of the broth. And it should be savory, with a touch of sweetness. It should be subtle, as to not overpower all the other accompaniments that go along with it. And each bowl should include the best part, a meaty piece of pork bone. Some say a bowl of great katil has healing powers. Some have gone as far to claim that it could fix a broken heart. For me, katil is a time machine, taking me back to some of my most intimate memories. Like as a little boy growing up in South Dakota, my brother and I running inside after playing in the snow for hours, slurping rice noodles and sipping the hot broth as fast as we could so we can go back outside and play. Or of my late grandfather, who fled a war-torn Cambodia in 1979 with his family and drove all of his children to be successful refugees here in America. Katil kept them fed when they were at their poorest here in the States. It was one of the meals prepared as an offering to the monks at a prayer ceremony when Grandpa passed. Every year on the anniversary of his passing, I make cathil in honor of his memory. Cathil was the first thing I ate when I made the big move to Los Angeles. It was there to welcome me. I moved out here because of a girl who would later become my wife. We met at Cambodian Heritage Camp in Colorado. At this camp, we were both counselors that taught adopted Cambodian kids about their culture. And it was at this camp that I got to know her and grew to like her. I mean, like really like her, but in a healthy way. I'm not a gambling man, but it turns out I'm a hopeless romantic. And I took the biggest gamble of my life and wagered my heart on this girl. I moved to Los Angeles to be closer to her, but missed home every day. When I was really homesick, I would go to the local Cambodian noodle shop and get a hot bowl of cathil. With every bite, my anxiety would lessen, and I'd walk out of that noodle shop full and ready to take on whatever was next. Learning to adapt to the LA culture wasn't easy, especially coming from the Midwest. The 405 for me was a nightmare. But the biggest and most important challenge that I had to overcome was getting my wife's parents to trust me with their daughter. Here I was, a guy moving thousands of miles away to date their daughter, and the first few meetings were rough. I remember very early on, we were leaving a temple in Echo Park. You know, the place with all the hills? I told her parents that I could move their car around. Her 18-year-old brother, who was learning how to drive, came along with me and asked if he could drive the car. I said, why not? Wrongest decision ever. I knew I messed up when he asked me to get out of the car and guide him in the parking area because he couldn't see over the hood. I get out of the car and I'm guiding him like an airport worker guides a plane. Now, I knew I really messed up when his parents walked around the corner to the side of their Camry, rocking back and forth from the constant stop-and-go driving, and their baby boy behind the wheel of this 2,000-pound death machine. After the panic and anger ended, I was frustrated and clueless as how to connect with her family. But I was determined because I really loved this girl, and I knew getting her parents to like me would mean the world to her, and so I kept at it. And once again, I turned to cathil. I remember the first day my mother-in-law cooked it for us. I was so excited about going over to her house that day. When we opened the front door to her home, the humidity from the pork bone broth hit us first. My mother-in-law was in the kitchen, sipping the hot broth and adjusting the flavor. Garlic was on another burner, frying, filling up the whole house with this amazing smell. And I was like a kid again. When everything was finished, we sat down at the dining area, and I can remember talking to her parents for the first time when I felt so comfortable. I felt so at home. We talked about food and we talked about life. I finally felt like I belonged. The best part, though, was seeing the relief in my wife's face, knowing that everything was going to be okay between us and her parents. This simple and humbling soup that kept me warm growing up in the harsh South Dakota winters comforted me in this new life-changing experience and has brought me closer to people that I thought I had nothing in common with, even without the snow.
Do you remember your high school history textbook? Huh? I remember mine. It was this like 6-inch thick beast that dominated my anxiety dreams, but they still managed to leave a whole lot of information out. Tonight, through the stories you hear on this stage, we get to learn more about our neighbors and their families and some of the cultural experiences that shape who they are here in LA. Our next guest will take us to a different time and place, one that my history books definitely left out, but is certainly worth a listen. Ladies and gentlemen, Maria Zeman.
The war in Indonesia with Japan began in 1941. We lived in Jakarta near my father's work, near the harbor. The Japanese soldiers stormed in. They moved us immediately to the city and took my father away. The rest of my family moved into a small house. We could still cook for the first few months. Once a week we were allowed to go and buy some food. Our problem was that we had nothing. I remember my oldest sister, Fransje, asked my mom what she had missed the most during the war. My mother said soap. Fransje had worked before the war and had some money. She knew Masanyao, a man who was free. She asked him to get her soap and started to sell the soap around. We all helped, so we were able to buy some food those first few months. Then all of a sudden, the soldiers put a double fence around the place and patrolled it. Fransje could never thank Masanyao for helping us, so she threw a thank you note over the gates. One day, Fransje and 4 other women were caught trying to communicate with outsiders. They came back beaten, black and blue all over. Another morning, we all had to come forward and give the soldiers our money and valuables. They were very rough. It was awful and very degrading. We were now not allowed to cook or have running water. Every day we went to the big building and received a handful of food. In the morning, we got a slice of bread, which was like a ladder, but we could chew on it for a long time. Twice a day, we had to stand in rows of 10 people deep. There was about a foot between each. Now soldiers could walk down each row. We had to listen to the captain's Misohara, who stood high on a pedestal commanding us to bow down and stand up. But when Captain Sone came, it was very bad. He would make us stand bent over for a long time. If anyone fell, they got hit. When my brother Pete was 12, they took him away. Other families were put in our house with us. We had a bed and 2 wooden cases over for our family to lay or sit on. My mother, Fransje, Nel and Klaar slept on the bed. Jan, Let, Trix and me slept on those 2 cases. We got 1 pail of water a day to wash ourselves. Nel's job was to carry heavy things for the soldiers and cleaning the small ditches that ran in front of the houses. Everybody had to use these ditches to pee or poo in, or throw up. It always stank so bad. Claire had to clean the big black drums where they cooked the food in. Sometimes she would bring scraps of food back to us under her toes. We, the 4 little ones, did nothing. We had no school, no church, nothing. Slowly we all ran out of clothes and shoes, but we always had soap. And we all played bridge. My mother and I got sick with tropical sores during the last months. Then one day we heard the soldiers leave. The war was over. I was 9 years. We had been living in this camp for 3.5 years. Fransje got hold of a banana, and I will never forget how she fed it to our mom with a tiny spoon. We were all so hungry, but Fransje gave the whole banana to my mother to save her life, and it did. Later, packages were thrown from the American planes, boxes full with food, cans, candies, lipstick, and cigarettes. These last 2 things I had never even seen before. We tried to eat the lipstick. Maas en Jou found us and took my mother, Jan, Letty, and Trix on a train to Bandung, where my father and brother were. The others had to stay with me until I got better. 2 months later, I was, and we too went to Bandung. I had not seen my father or Pete in 4 years. I did not even recognize them. My father had awful scars on every inch of his body. He had a huge, swollen nose and a long, strangly gray beard. I did not recognize him. The violence didn't end with the war. In 1946, we got on the first ship from Indonesia to Holland. Then we all decided to forget the camp time, never, ever to talk or think about it. My wish as a newly freed 9-year-old, as I watched the American planes give food to my starving family, was to become an American. In 1969, I came to the United States. In 74, I bought my first house in Norwalk. In 78, I became a United States citizen. I'm happy. But in 2003, a lady came to me from Holland. She was looking for any survivors of the Chideng camp. We talked for hours, and I started to realize that I really had PTSD. She advised me to get help. My doctor sent me to Alma Smith, the best counselor there is. She said to join a group to meet people. I went to a community senior center and joined a writing class run by Bonnie Mansell. I listened and observed. I love to write, but I never before wrote about me, always about my travels, family, animals, plants, and more. Now I listen to stories about people in the class, stories about real life. I want to know why we are here, to accept what was dealt to me and understand the meaning of it. I believe that this community, the writing class, Bonnie and Alma, taught me about myself. I'm ever so grateful.
As we continue with Unheard L.A., one thing has become abundantly clear. L.A. is one hell of a character actor, y'all. Its different appearances in the stories and lives of our storytellers is dynamic and distinct. Today, we're in Downey, which you can see throughout our show in these shots, like the one taken above, taken by our very own Bill Youngblood. Now, Downey also has its own story, and here to share a bit of that, let's welcome Downey's own and former KPCC intern, Christian Brown.
Let me start by saying that the first time I heard of Downey, I didn't know where it was either. Mama, where is Downey? I asked her when she told my brother and me that we were moving here. It's closer to work and church, she said. So, child, thank God that I don't have to commute from the valley no more. You see, we were migrants shuffling from place to place after the 1994 Northridge earthquake. We needed to move, and Downey would be the place that caught us. You know, when I think of Downey, that's the word that rings in my ears and lingers in my thoughts the most. Moving, movement, migration. Downey was established by migrants. Dejected yet hopeful Southerners came here to start over again after the Civil War. They were greeted and mobilized by one man whose name we'll forever remember, John Gately Downey. You see, Mr. Downey was also a migrant, in fact, an immigrant from Ireland.
He came here looking for opportunity, and he found 17,000 acres of land in the Los Nietos Valley that he transformed into what he called a garden of Southern California. The city of Downey was definitely a garden then because it was full of orange groves. Rows and rows of orchards used to spread all across this city, which stayed fertile thanks to the San Gabriel and Rio Hondo rivers that it sits between. But John Gately Downey didn't stop at establishing a city. He kept moving. The man would eventually become California's 7th governor and the first immigrant to ever serve in that office. Later, Downey would donate land to help give L.A. County what he called a University of Southern California. I do wonder whatever happened to that school. Fun fact, USC still has a street called Downey Way that runs through it, in case you ever wondered why that was there. But it didn't take long for his self-named city to skyrocket, literally. From 1940 till 1960, the town's population tripled thanks to one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That's right, NASA came here to Downey, and with it came new migrants, workers, moving their whole families here for middle-class jobs. Downey workers helped build and design the technology that made the Apollo space program possible. JFK, the JFK, flew into Downey to sign off on the project that changed the world. Downey has a habit of changing the world. No, I'm not exaggerating. There'd basically be no fast food without Downey. In the 1950s and 60s, fast food giants Taco Bell and McDonald's would launch their earliest locations here. And Downey still clings to the title of having the oldest operating McDonald's in the world right here on Lakewood Boulevard and Florence Avenue. Downey changed music. In 1964, more migrants, this time with the last name Carpenter, moved to Downey, and pop music never crooned the same way again. With 70s hits like We've Only Just Begun. And that other one, Why Do Birds Suddenly Appear? The duo of Karen and Richard Carpenter celebrated their Downey roots, and there's 2 apartment buildings in town that still bear the name of those 2 signature songs. As the 80s and 90s approached and passed, Downey's demographics changed as the aviation and aerospace era came to a close. But just as Downey's founders, new families, this time Latino families, arrived, bringing hope, diversity, and a new energy into this city. Jody Vallejo teaches sociology at USC, and she once called Downey the epitome of Latino upward mobility in L.A. County. You see, regardless of what rhetoric is made of Latino Americans in this country, Downey's population shatters every stereotype. Downey exemplifies an emerging middle-class Latino community with a high school graduation rate above 95% and an unemployment rate below the national average. Business owners, restaurateurs, lawyers, artists, authors, students, politicians, educators, stay-at-home parents, retailers, medical health professionals, movers, shakers, migrants. That's Downey. And hey, you know we've made it when Portos is persuaded to open up shop in your downtown. So we must be doing something right. Downey, we're doing something right.
Downey's story is one of transformation and of starting over again and again. When it comes to our own lives, to us as individuals, starting over can be devastating, sometimes. And sometimes it opens you up to opportunities beyond what you'd ever imagine for yourself. And sometimes it's both. Please, welcome to the stage, Liz Sanford.
After my divorce was final, I was pretty wrecked, pretty destroyed in terms of knowing who I was, and I felt an overwhelming need to prove myself to anyone and everyone I came across. My ex left while I was pregnant with our third child for another woman, and I felt pretty small, pretty raw, and pretty unseen. Until this point, I had been focusing on my kids and freelance writing from home. Now I was urgently looking for full-time employment. I wanted a job that would make me look cool. My ex was and still is in the industry, as was the woman he left me for. And I was driven, almost obsessively so, to prove that I was cool enough, cooler even than this other woman, so that he would really understand how much he messed up by letting me go and see that he was really missing out. That didn't happen. I couldn't find a job at all, let alone a cool job. One day, out of the blue, an old acquaintance called me up and said, "I have this job opportunity, and for some reason, I thought of you. I think you would be perfect for it." She didn't even know that I was looking for a job. I said, "Okay, what is it?" "It's nonprofit work in the field of homeless services. You would be connecting homeless individuals from all over Metro LA to housing opportunities." A couple of days passed, and although this wasn't the cool job I had dreamed of, I couldn't get the idea out of my head. I decided to apply and go in for an interview. They said, "We can't pay you a lot, there are no benefits, but we know you're a single mom, and we can be flexible with hours." I took the job. Fast forward 6 months, I am working across LA, from West Hollywood to Highland Park, from the Hollywood Hills to downtown. I am in Skid Row a lot and feeling empowered, like I have a purpose. I feel human again. I'm connecting with case managers, city officials. I'm interacting daily with the people I am actually serving. My agency lets me co-facilitate a poetry class every Friday at the library for homeless folks. This alone was incredibly healing. It was during one of these poetry groups that I wrote the poem I want to share with you today. I have always loved writing poetry, but I have never, until now, made it public in any way. I wrote this because I felt genuinely accepted for the first time in years. My job pulled me out of the intense need I had to seek constant validation from men. It realigned my priorities. I stopped listening to that vague voice of disapproval that haunted me. I knew now that I was doing something important, tangibly rocking the lives of people, my own life most of all. I want to give you some context before I read this poem. I was living in Los Feliz in the smallest apartment I could find, spending 80% of my income on rent in order to put my kids in the, quote, good school. I was in what for me felt like eternal survival mode. I always felt out of place, unlike the other school moms. So when I saw this mother walking around Skid Row on this particular day with these kids just holding it down, I was like, man, this is where it's at. This is real life. These are real people. This is real struggle. This is real grit. This is real integrity. She inspired me and still inspires me to not be ashamed. To not be ashamed that I am broke all the time, or that my kids are constantly tardy, or that I am a single mom, or that I don't have it all together, or anything together for that matter. Because honestly, I am trying the best I can. And we are all trying the best we can. I call this poem Skinny Black Girls Pushing Strollers Downtown. To those skinny black girls I see pushing strollers downtown, am I allowed, just for a second, to say that I get you? I get you. At least more than I get those East Side girls I see pushing strollers on Sunset Boulevard with men holding diaper bags and purses on their way to brunch. I see you over there walking down San Pedro with a couple of kids in one of those cheap umbrella strollers they sell at Rite Aid. You see me over here walking down San Pedro with a couple of kids and a borrowed dress from Urban Outfitters I tell people is vintage, I feel you check me out, eyeing this baby on my hip and wondering why I'm here. You feel me too, check you out, embarrassed. We see our babies and we scan our bodies. We pass inspection and smile at each other, proud of the shape of these thighs. We've lost so many things in this fire, but not these. I want to tell you that you are beautiful, but I don't and I won't. You nod at me though, and I feel like a country peasant just touched by the queen. A man pees in the street with one hand and proposes to us with the other, as if we are one. We refocus our attention on our own bodies and our own babies. Don't worry though, I know you win this. But I'll keep it real for you anyways. Until next time.
How'd you all get here today? Planes, trains, automobiles? You might drive? Yeah? On the freeway, maybe? What freeway? How about you right here in the front? How'd you get here? The 91. Ooh, I took the 105. 105 is a pretty straight shot from Watts. But while that is the freeway that got me here, it's got a pretty complicated history with Downey and the people who lived here. For a little more on that, please welcome Kara Lopez Lee.
I used to travel the 105 on the way to my grandma's house, but that's not how I remember it. I always think of the 105 in the movie Speed. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock hurtling down the unfinished LA freeway in a public bus with a bomb on board. For me, the 105 was its own kind of bomb, the one that blew up my childhood. For the first 9 years of my life, from 1963 to 1972, I lived with my grandparents in a little pink house right here in Downey, back when this LA suburb was mostly what demographers call non-Hispanic white. My grandpa bought the house for $1 down, $1 to close, a deal for Army veterans. It sat on a dory street between two dead ends, one of those neighborhoods where everyone is friends and moms let kids run wild, so long as we followed the rule, you come home when the streetlights come on. My mom was my Mexican-Chinese grandma. Grandpa was a Korean from Hawaii, my dad's stepfather. My birth mother is white, but she wasn't in the picture. For those keeping score, I was a mixed-race kid in a Latino-Asian household in a white neighborhood. The only other minorities on the block were this Japanese family down the street. But none of that meant much in our lower middle-class neighborhood full of humble folks without delusions of grandeur. Everybody loved Grandpa. He had this laid-back Hawaiian charm, lived on island time, always laughing. He was a dedicated member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers and a generous neighbor who lent everyone his tools. He built a loft bed in my room to give me a hideaway for reading and extra space below that for playing. Mom treated homemaking like chemical warfare. Battled invading germs armed with Pine Sol and Formula 409. Just remembering those fumes still gives me a headache. Still, her comfort food was a Mexican-American peace treaty. Albondiga soup and corned beef and cabbage. Chocolatey champurrado and homemade apple pie. These were the smells of security. Those smells helped seal the bond with my best friend, Shelley, the girl next door. I'd stand outside her door and shout, "Can Shelley come out and play?" Or we'd climb over our pink brick fence into each other's backyards. In the weeds between houses, we became jungle explorers. Shelley was a redheaded white girl with a bazillion freckles, and I turned brown without trying. But we became friends before we knew the difference. One day we played barefoot in my yard, hunting for snails to collect in my Tubsy doll's pink plastic bathtub. We were rescuing them from her big brother Billy, who enjoyed pouring salt on snails to watch them shrivel and die. I still wonder if he grew up to be a scientist or a psycho. Shelley and I sat on the lawn to sort through our snail collection, and I noticed my feet were muddy. Now, elsewhere in LA, I had heard the phrase dirty Mexican, and I developed a fear of being dirty. Embarrassed, I said, well, I think feet are weird. And Shelley said, well, I think my feet are beautiful, and they help me walk around. Then she sang, everything is beautiful in its own way. That song was popular then, so I sang along. Red and yellow, black and white, all are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. We were only 8, but we understood what we were singing. The lyrics are not exactly subtle. In years to come, that memory comforted me. In 1972, I turned 9, and the California Department of Transportation put our neighborhood on notice. We had to move to make way for the 105 freeway, Caltrans' next solution to LA traffic congestion. Communities up and down the corridor protested the cruel steamroller of eminent domain. My grandparents bought a bigger house in a higher income neighborhood. Everything after that felt like our punishment for trying to move up in the world. I missed Shelley, but I still lived in Downey, so I felt optimistic about making new friends, till I rode my bike through the neighborhood, only minority in sight. And a little girl hollered, "Get out of my neighborhood, you dirty Mexican." Used to the easy acceptance of a Dory Street, I duck-walked over to her on my purple Schwinn with the banana seat to explain why it's wrong to call people that. Surely when she saw how friendly I was, she'd apologize. Instead, she stomped away. By suggesting her parents were wrong, I only made her hate me more. I spent 2 lonely years till I started East Middle School and met my new best friend. Let's call her Kathy. She was the new white girl on the block and didn't know anybody. Because Kathy became my only friend, I laughed along when she called me Beaner. She called other Mexican kids worse names, so one day I asked, if you hate Mexicans, why do you hang around me? Well, you aren't like other Mexicans, she said. I was the only Mexican she knew. Still, Kathy shared her family and her home with me when I really needed them. You see, my grandparents divorced when I was 12, and my grandma became the only single working mom for blocks. Kathy's parents must have known she needed a break, and so did I. They invited me to sleepovers every weekend. Kathy and I stole cookies from her mom's cookie jar. We watched scary movies all night and traced stories on each other's backs with our hands. But our friendship had limits, and nothing could save Mom and me from moving down in the world. We were broke, our yard became an eyesore, and neighbors complained. I began to internalize their fears, to resent my own family, and couldn't help asking the terrible question, am I a dirty Mexican? Despite that, at Downey High, I found new friends who accepted me, not as an exception to the rule. Kathy and I grew apart. As for Shelley, once we left Dory Street, I never saw her again. As a teenager, sometimes I drove back to Dory to stare at our boarded-up house. It took years to evict everyone. I envied the families who stayed, even though the neighborhood looked condemned. I was in college when Caltrans bulldozed our house. One night, I got out of my VW Bug to stand in the dirt where my room used to be, where Grandpa built me wood toy boxes with wheels, and Shelley and I sat inside them and rolled around the wood floors playing bumper cars. Now, I felt as empty as that dirt lot. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if not for the 105. Cradled by tight-knit neighbors, might my grandparents' marriage have survived? Might Shelley and I still be friends? Might my youth have remained filled with the unreserved acceptance of Dory Street? I was 30 when Caltrans finished the 105 freeway in 1993. Today, the 105 has completely eliminated LA traffic congestion. Who knows, maybe it helped. For me, though, It felt like the government tore down my happy childhood, back when my grandparents' little pink house was the safest place I knew.
The evolution of Los Angeles is not only one of demographics and politics, but rather one that's written across our streets and in our skylines. From Art Deco to glorious googies, craftsmen to mid-century modern, the changing styles of LA architecture have fascinated photographers for decades. Here to tell you a bit about that legacy and hers, please welcome Ashley Noel.
I love Los Angeles. There's something very special about this city, and I've had lots of LA moments. The one I hold the dearest also had an impact on the photographic series I developed because I love Los Angeles and photography. My mentor was Julius Schulman. I don't say his name lightly. Julius was the godfather of architectural photography. I can't emphasize his impact enough, and I got to share time with him. He was not always easy, and yet absolutely everything all at the same time. So full of information and very defined boundaries. He was not at all interested in digital photography, and he had serious issues with the phrase shooting. He would always correct me. You are not shooting anything. You are making a photograph. I still catch myself. Julius was my friend. So I'm moving along like all artists. I had been photographing places around Los Angeles for a few years. It had been about doing photography. I photograph with a large view camera. And this was about seeing what happened. In 2016, something clicked. Any cloudy day, holiday, early morning, I had to be out. After a few weeks, I saw it, the Los Angeles series. Everyone has a connection with architecture. The structures we live in, shop in, learn in, and work in. The cities we navigate have buildings and shops we pass by so regularly we hardly see them. The structures we engage hold our memories, good and bad. And over time, we can look back and see our life experiences in those buildings. The architecture of Los Angeles tells the story of this city like layers of time. One block can have so much to say. That is why I do this series, to hold on to the history and unique places that, even without realizing it, give Los Angeles the magic we all feel. Last year, my daughters bought me the book, Julius Schulman, Los Angeles. After a few tears, I looked through the book and discovered we had taken photographs of some of the same locations 70 years apart. Julius was a big supporter of Los Angeles, of its buildings and its unique history. I'd like to think I'm doing this series with him by my side, and all for the love of Los Angeles.
Who are you? Where are you from? What are you? Some of us get these questions weekly, daily even. They all come together. They tie together like a knot, impossible to get out. Responses to that may vary, especially when you're talking about the art of a slam poet. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Sedillo.
I was born on the east side of Los Angeles, across the tracks from abandoned steel, an industrial petrified forest. Across the steps, a giant green tar protected customers and gossipers, our abuelitas, from rays of sun and the bombs of birds. They spoke Spanish, sold mangoes, papayas, and cherries, my favorite. As a child, I could never quite make the connection between the broken empty bottles across the steps and the broken empty men poured out the rust factories from across the tracks. So my cousins and I would gather rocks of dirt aimed directly for the head, and the men would yell back something like, "What do you kids know about life?" And we yell back, "Take that, drunks!" That was messed up. But that's just how it was. Growing up, where Valley climbs up and over meets Soto, El Sereno. In the 1950s, my mother's father, a technician by trade, by birth, a prince among men, in a backwards kingdom that held him back, that treated him different for the radiance of his unapologetic brown skin, raised a family of 6 on a single income. There is hard-fought genius in me, older than my mother's womb. December 18th, 1981. After months of fear and absence, my father makes his return. My aunt moves to protect hospital bed. She does not want to see you. You know what you did. It would be best for everyone if you were just to leave. My mother holds her newborn, her only begotten son. There is a pain in me, older than my father's blood. As a child, I could never quite make the connection between his fingers around my throat and the anguish in his chest, a suffering older than my father's bones. His father's whiskey, grandfather's short temper, long-lived legacy to a time history does not care to remember, because beatings are not fit for scrapbooks and genealogies of shame rarely make their way to the oral tradition of campfire. There is a burning in my heart that time cannot trace. Moved out from my father's, the suburbs treated me different. One day in the workforce, I told my boss, "Last night I met a woman, beautiful and intelligent, asks, where at? Boyle Heights, where's that? The east side of Los Angeles." Asks, incredulous, "You met an intelligent woman in East Los Angeles?" I wanted to slap the cavalry from his smirk, beat the manifest destiny out of his name badge, but needing a paycheck, I stood in the weakness of silence, the pain and anguish of generations long past alive, and sickened in my chest there is a shame attempted upon us, older than the tongues of bigots. Walked off job, marched off lot, fist up for the cause, because in a world that has told us no, that has told us different, I've chosen yes. Yes, I'm Chicano. Yes, Mexicano. Yes, indigenous. Yes, I brown skin and bleed red. Yes, unafraid and unashamed. My passion, my potential, my intelligence. Yes, the fire in my chest. Look into my eyes, you could feel its strength. And yes, as a matter of fact, some of the most radiant, gifted, talented, beautiful, intelligent women I have ever met reside on the east side of Los Angeles, just across the steps from the streets where I was born. Yes, I am all of this and more. Yo soy la raza cósmica. I, like you, am made of stars. You, like me, so full of pain, are brimming with genius. Listen to no one who would make you feel different.
Hi. I'm here to distract you while a piano rolls out behind me. Don't look at it. Don't look. Just be cool. Be cool. You're looking. I see you looking. I'm right here. Okay, let's just have a conversation, huh? Everyone loved high school, right? Yeah? You know, tons of friends. We all passed math. All the really popular smart kids. That prom you went to with your ex that wasn't awkward at all. Here to share her story of high school, perseverance, and her friend named Aiden. Please welcome Lauren Villegas.
I have a very distinct memory of the Foursquare court in my elementary school's playground. Simple, yellow boxes drawn in paint on asphalt. Its looks were as plain and simple as the rules of the game. Bounce the ball back and forth from square to square. If you miss, you're out. I must have played hundreds of rounds, maybe thousands, but I remember one in particular. It must have been hot. The sun was too bright, and it made my eyes hurt. I saw the ball coming, but I thought it landed in the square next to me. Apparently, it had not, so I was out. The other girls told me to leave, that I was out, but all I could say over and over was, "It was on the line. That's not fair. It was on the line." I started crying, and then the girls started laughing, and I remembered being confused. You laugh when something is funny. My mother had told me that 1,000 times. Crying is sad, not funny, so why were they laughing? I have 100 memories like these. Crying when noises were too loud or lights too bright. Screaming when I felt so much anger and had no way to tell people what was wrong. Staring blankly as my classmates snickered at sarcastic remarks about our teachers. I thought I was the only one who reacted to life in these ways, until I met Aiden. Having attended a K-8 school since I was 6, my freshman year was the first time I switched schools. It was overwhelming and awful. I didn't know anyone's names or what they were like. I hadn't spent enough time with them to pick out their facial patterns, to know if so-and-so in my lit class raised her eyebrows when she was amused or when she was upset. I didn't know how much my teachers wanted me to speak up in class, or if they would interpret my silence as stupidity. I was so entrenched in the knowledge that no one understood how I felt that I almost missed it. The way his jaw clenched when a sudden loud noise pierced the classroom, how his words were just a bit too loud and unsure and confused at times. The identical cringes we wore when the school's pianos were tuned, the off-pitch sounds plucking at our nerves. was a piano player, like me. He loved music, like me. He had autism, like me. But unlike me, he didn't care who knew it. He told me directly. I didn't even have to ask. Until that day, my diagnosis was my secret alone. But after that, he opened my eyes to the hundreds around us, the invisible community that was everywhere I went. I say invisible, but really it was only that way to me. Others can usually spot the outward signs of autism pretty quickly. It was, and still is, incredibly ironic. We all belong to a community everyone can see. The only people who can't? Us. But there is something that we can see. 9 times out of 10, others don't look beyond the symptoms and traits listed under the autism spectrum diagnosis. But I see other things, like the pieces Aiden plays. They touch others, but they make me sob because I feel my own experiences as echoes of his musical expression. I see the real invisible community shimmering around me, a reminder that I am not alone.
Lots of love for our storytellers. We are here so we can share those stories that too often go unheard and to show you the kind of magic that happens when we stop and listen to each other. And now we want to listen to you. How'd you like the show tonight? Please let us know and tell us you want to see more Unheard L.A. by texting Unheard L.A. to 63735. Thank you to John Cohn, Ashley Alvarado, and the rest of the KPCC in-person team today. Justin Baker, Nathaniel Beaver, Caitlin Biljean, Ryan Carmona, Charlotte Duran, Tony Federico, Daphne Lou, Valentino Rivera, Quincy Sora-Smith, Bill Youngblood, and Liz Zimmerman. Also, thank you to Cut Sal for use of his track Unbound, Sweltos from the album The Eternal Get Down. Thank you to our growing Unheard L.A. family, our wonderful Downey Theatre people, and the California Wellness Foundation. I will see you next month in Baldwin Park. You can RSVP on your phone right now at kpcc.org/unheardla. Thank you for coming. Do not leave with your story unheard.